Why was Dooku terrified of Obi-Wan on the Invisible Hand in the climactic duel between the Sith Lord and the two Jedi Knights? Greetings, curious acolytes of the Force, and welcome back to the archives. Lightsaber duels often happen so fast and so cleanly that we don't really get to see all of the minor details and see the subtle nuances and pushes of the Force that these combatants are using with each and every blade stroke. From outsiders looking in, all we see is an expertly pulled off sword fight. However, when you read into the Star Wars novelizations, you will discover an entire world through the eyes of these Force wielders and the battle that they are engaging in. To them, the entire act is a dance, a game of chess, not a contest of physical prowess so much as a challenge of wills and the ability to simply think one's actions into reality. In one of these most famous duels, that being the titular one at the beginning of the Revenge of the Sith between Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Count Dooku. Upon research, we learn a very surprising truth when reading into the novel's tellings of the events, that being that there was a certain point in the duel where Count Dooku became suddenly terrified of his Jedi opponents. Both Anakin and Obi-Wan struck fear into the Sith Lord, and a fear that he had never felt previously in a duel with either men. Though we know more why Anakin actually surprised Dooku, Obi-Wan Kenobi we believe is actually the more interesting one, and we wanted to focus entirely on Kenobi. Specifically though, why Obi-Wan's Soresu lightsaber style actually caused Dooku to fear for his life. So come along with us today, my friends, as we read the novelization of Revenge of the Sith and this duel, and talk about the immensely satisfying moment when Count Dooku is dismayed by Obi-Wan's pure skill. When we look into this moment, we need to remember exactly why it's such a big deal that Dooku feels this way about Obi-Wan. We can talk all day about how Anakin unleashing his true power as the Chosen One and using the dark side affected Dooku and caused Dooku a measure of concern. But the Count already had some idea of the boy's strength, as Dooku had dueled the boy many times, as well as he knew how high esteem Palpatine held the boy. While Dooku still vastly underestimated Anakin, he at least knew the power was there, buried deep beneath the surface. As of Obi-Wan Kenobi, however, as a pure lightsaber duelist, at least up until this point, Dooku doesn't think much of him. This is not to say that Dooku thinks that Kenobi is bad or a subpar Jedi, but just that Dooku knows the apprentice of his apprentice. He is well versed in everything that he taught Qui-Gon Jinn, and everything that Qui-Gon likely passed down to Obi-Wan. The Count is fully capable of defending himself against someone whose tricks he already knows, and tricks he likely invented himself. We see many times both in Attack of the Clones, as well as in the subsequent Clone Wars, that Obi-Wan continues to be dominated by Dooku at every turn, and we have spoken of before why we believe that Obi-Wan was intimidated by Dooku, which leads into his repeated failures when fighting him. But it seems that by the ending of the Clone Wars, Obi-Wan dominates this fear and becomes something of a fearful person himself. We believe the moment that Dooku is dismayed by Obi-Wan's skill is very important because of what it represents for both of these characters, especially Dooku. Dooku, who respects very few wielders of the blade. Anyway, it all starts when the three combatants are poised to begin their duel in the captain's survey room aboard the Invisible Hand. All three of them move at once, starting their great battle with an understanding of one another. However, not everything goes as planned. Dooku is expected to put up a farce of being defeated, and unfortunately for him, both Anakin and Obi-Wan have seemingly learned nothing from their previous duels, and this one to Dooku is just pathetic. Again, this is the beginning. Dooku is barely even trying as he sidesteps, parries, deflects, and dodges all of their attacks. The two Jedi seem to be oddly clumsy and completely out of sync with one another as they keep getting in each other's way, leaving openings for Dooku to just toss them around. Openings that shouldn't be there at this point. At this moment, the Sith Lord is almost insulted that they could have even thought that they could face him, and he's feeling disgusted that he was going to have to pretend to surrender to these bumbling fools. But then, something strange happens. Dooku says, "Your moves are too slow, Kenobi, too predictable. You'll have to do better." Very well then, the Jedi said, and shot straight upward over Dooku's head, so fast that it seemed like he had vanished. And in the space where Kenobi's chest had been, was now only the blue lighting of Skywalker's lightsaber. Only a desperate whirl to one side made what would have been a smoking hole in his chest into a line of scorch through his cloak. He threw himself, spinning up and away from the two Jedi to land on a table, disengaging for a moment to recover his composure. but by the time his boots touched down, Kenobi was there to meet him, his blade weaving through a defensive velocity so bewilderingly fast that Dooku dared not even try a strike. He threw a feint toward Kenobi's face, then dropped and spun in a reverse ankle sweep, but not only did Kenobi easily overleap this attack, Dooku nearly lost his own foot to a slash from Skywalker, who again came out of nowhere and now carved through the table so that it collapsed under his weight and dumped the Sith Lord unceremoniously to the floor. This was not the plan. The duel continues and Dooku finally gets Kenobi out of the way for a little bit, so of course he can focus on Anakin, who shows up with immense power that throws Dooku for yet another loop. Soon, he realized that Anakin's Shien had been a fake out and he was really a master of gems, but it wouldn't be too long before Kenobi rejoined the fight. And now, we're going to continue to read this passage from the novelization. Kenobi's master had been Qui-Gon Jinn, Dooku's own Padawan. Dooku had fenced Qui-Gon thousands of times, and he knew every weakness of the Itaru form. With its ridiculous acrobatics, he drove a series of flashing thrusts towards Kenobi's legs to draw the Jedi Master into a flipping overhead movement and leap, so that Dooku could burn through his spine from kidneys to shoulder blades. In this image, this plan, was so clear in Dooku's mind that he almost failed to notice that Kenobi met every one of his thrusts without so much as moving his feet. Staying perfectly centered, perfectly balanced, blade never moving a millimeter more than was necessary, deflecting without effort, riposting with flickering strikes and stabs swifter than the tongue of a Gorillian ghost viper. And when Dooku felt Skywalker regain his feet and stride once more to his back, he finally registered the source of that blinding defensive velocity, the same that Kenobi had used a moment ago, and only then, belated, did he understand that Kenobi's Itaru and Shi-Cho had been a ploy as well. Kenobi had become a master of Soresu. Dooku's farce had suddenly, inexplicitly spun from humorous to deadly serious and was tumbling rapidly towards terrifying. And there it is. The novel explains it all quite well. How Dooku had trained so much with Qui-Gon and Itaru that he was so confident that he knew every single nook, only to be completely blindsided by the fact that Obi-Wan was now a master of Soresu. I think this strategy on behalf of Kenobi and Anakin was quite brilliant. The way they hid their true power and skill until midway through the fight, and then using the power to surprise and overwhelm the Count was definitely the winning hand. What's even more interesting than this is actually a Sith tactic from the Darth Bane novel. There is a moment where Bane is getting his revenge on a classmate in the training dueling session in an arena, and exercises this exact move, hiding his true strength from his opponent until the last minute. This is something that gains Bane much praise by his Sith master, who says that this kind of deception was certainly the way of the Sith. And I find this link between Kenobi and Bane exceptionally interesting. This all goes to show though, that Kenobi had mastered Soresu to such a degree that not even the legendary Dooku could keep up with, and had ever seen before, ultimately reverting back to the Force to stop the onslaught. We have heard it said many times before, but Obi-Wan Kenobi is not a master of Soresu in the third form of lightsaber combat. Kenobi is the master. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on why Obi-Wan Soresu absolutely terrified Dooku in their duel? And what are your thoughts on this brilliant idea on behalf of Kenobi and Skywalker? As always, my friends and acolytes, thank you so much for visiting our archives. May the Force be with you, and I hope to see you again soon.